This was an impressive and unprecedented funeral by Latin American standards and by probably most world standards. Many heads of state, a very, very low low-level U.S. delegation, certainly, but there were some very, very famous faces from the United States. A Hollywood actor, Sean Penn, was there, and probably more importantly, civil rights activist Jesse Jackson, who's joining me now. Reverend Jackson, thank you so much for being with us. I'd like to start by asking you to comment, to repeat something that you said at the funeral, which I thought was very important. You said that it was time for the United States and Venezuela, who, as we all know, have had such tense, such conflictive relationships over the last 14 years, to come together and to see what their common needs.
The stakes are so high. Mutual benefit is so great. We must get beyond this kind of toying and talking politics. First of all, we should relate to Venezuela differently because it's our hemisphere. Only Mexico and has a bigger market, and Brazil. That's important. Second issue, the killer in America is not so much Al-Qaeda, it is the drug trafficking. So a renewed connection with Colombia and Venezuela and Mexico to save a lot of lives. Third thing, we're fighting big wars in the Middle East, positioning ourselves to protect oil. There's more oil reserves in Venezuela than there are in the Middle East. 4 days from Venezuela to America and 4 weeks from the Middle East to America. It's a lot of reasons why we should think through a renewed relationship.
You met with Vice President Nicolás Maduro, very soon to be the interim president and could very likely be the next president to replace Hugo Chavez. Did you get a sense from him that finally there could be an interest on the part of Venezuela to come closer to the United States government?
That's my impression, but there are two things he keeps saying and said it publicly today. Is one, this issue of mutual respect. After all, this is the region of the world where the Banana Republic ruled, and America were the allies of the landed gentry. We were the allies of the oppressive status quo. So you have a whole generation of leaders in this region of the world who are demanding that they focus on the poor, even theologically, liberation theology, and that never again shall we conduct ourselves with an elite group and not take democracy seriously.
I was rather surprised to hear you say also at the funeral in your brief address that you basically were supporting Nicolás Maduro. You seem to endorse him carrying on in the place of Hugo Chavez. Aren't you afraid that will raise a lot of eyebrows both here in Venezuela and in the United States?
No, I think the issue there is that I'm supporting an orderly transition. You know, when presidents die, often there's a lot of disorder, a lot of chaos. Whatever they do, it must be an orderly transition for the sake of the people. I saw him brandishing about his Constitution today in this statement, and staying close to that Constitution and involving all the people is the way to go. But it would be inappropriate for me to endorse anyone in this race. But I would urge people to take a steep, a tough look at orderly transition. I remember in 2000, when George Bush lost the election and Al Gore won, the winner lost, the loser won. The democracy was more important than the winner, keeping the fabric of our body politic together. Democracy must be seen in a way that involves that kind of sacrificial leadership.
Do you feel that there is some kind of a risk that there could be a disorderly transition here? It's still such a polarized country.
Well, whenever there is an election, there's always that possibility. I get the impression that order is the order of the day in Venezuela, that Venezuelans are beginning to find the value of democracy, the value of stability, the value of trade, the value of being forthright on the issue of involving women and Afro-Venezuela, kind of multiracial, multicultural Venezuela. When I was here some years ago with President Chavez, I received the Liberation Award. And we met with African Venezuelans, we met with Jewish leaders, we met with labor leaders, we met with church leaders, we met with a broad cross-section of people. He subsequently had a meeting of African Latinos around from Mexico down to Brazil. So he had that kind of sensitivity. And I suppose you may have seen 1 million people come past his casket. I mean, I've never seen. It means that he was obsessed with being the poor people's hero. And so more people are eating a nutritious meal. More people are housed. More do have an education. His unfinished business, he died so early, 58, 59 years of age. But his mission of turning riches, resource into bottom up, not just top down, has gotten through. Even I was in his office the day that Katrina struck in New Orleans. We were talking. He looked at the weather map. He said, "Reverend, this is the big one coming to New Orleans. This is the big one." It was Katrina. I left his office and went to New Orleans. The first company to have resources for the people in New Orleans was Citgo, was Venezuela. He offered to send 1,000 generators because people were in the dark. So Venezuela got to New Orleans before Bush got to New Orleans, as a matter of fact.
Well, Reverend Jesse Jackson, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you.
Well, as you can see, and as we know, the president of Venezuela was loved and adored, admired by millions, but also he has his enemies, very staunch enemies. In just a very short time, Nicolas Maduro will be sworn in as the interim president. The opposition deputies will not be attending the ceremony at the National Assembly. They consider that this whole next step is a, quote, constitutional fraud.